Why Mean Mark Waters could be deemed as a perfect film according to Carl Jung. This is an analysis of Mean Girls according to the theories of structural analysis and the analytic psychology of Carl Jung.
The actants or archetypes that appear in this story are the following ones. 1. Protagonist. Caddy. 2. Teacher or helper. Ms. Norbury, Janice, Damien. 3. Wanted objet. Aaron Samuels. 4. Antagonist. Regina George. 5. Ignored person. No one. 6. Father of protagonist. Katie's father. Mean Girls is a 2004 film directed by Mark Waters based on the screenplay by the comedian Tina Fey. The highlight is that this film achieves something that very few films are capable of, and is that it is perfect. But one might ask, in what lies such a perfection? Well, in that neither the positive nor the negative aspects of life predominate over the others but are neutralized, and at the end, a state of equilibrium is reached, where the sum of the opposites is an absolute zero, the only one that so far I have found in the films that I have studied. The story is based on Rosalind Wiseman's 2002 self-help book, Queen Bees and Wannabes, which describes female high school social cliques. Fey also drew from her own experience at Upper Darby High School to nurture the script with her unique and special sense of humor. In the conflict between love versus hate, love versus lovelessness, intelligence against stupidity, and authenticity against inauthenticity, the result is an absolute zero. And what could be the relevance of it? Well, this is not only a film that achieves to become a fine piece of entertainment, besides containing a moralizing and uplifting history, but also is realistic and trustworthy in reflecting the dichotomies and imperfections of our world, so riddled with inequality and injustice. It is a perfect marriage between the sublime ideals of the soul, which impel us to be better and to aspire perfection, along with the discords, pettiness, evilness, ugliness, stupidity, imperfections, and infinite sorrows that abound in our material reality. This forces us to reconsider our ideals as we go to bed every night. They all exist simultaneously, all matter, nothing is less or inferior, none eliminates the other. It is a state of a perfect balance between the forces in eternal discord in our world. There's no deception or evasion. Between love and lovelessness, or alienation and authenticity, none of them prevail and end in a draw. This probably happens because the screenwriter, Tina Fey, didn't want to make a silly comedy where the bad guys were defeated with social ridicule and moral defeat, as it is usually the case in the teen movies from the 80s, such as Back to the Future, Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful. No, here the villain is not defeated or humiliated, but becomes, in a way, good, by making her see that her desire to cause harm is nothing more but a psychological issue she had, which could be solved with a simple occupational therapy, which she could overcome by practicing some kind of physical and mental activity, such as the practice of lacrosse. Caddy, despite showing a disadvantage due to her lousy socializing skills, having never before been integrated into a public school, demonstrates she can be a fast learner and intelligently overcomes her shortcomings. From the beginning, her problems are loneliness and isolation, which she gradually manages to overcome, although, at the cost of no longer being faithful to whom she is, and she becomes a vacuous version of herself, false and inauthentic. Also, she must face the dilemma of surviving to integrate into the ruthless society of the plastics. Caddy is conflicted between the pairs of love/friendship against authenticity/popularity. Caddy sacrifices her authenticity in exchange for having friends and becoming popular, eventually fitting into the fabric of high school society to which she joined. She found herself in the disjunction between being herself or becoming another, shallow and vain, in exchange for having friends and being loved by the boy of her dreams, Aaron. However, the friendship of the plastics is superficial and not authentic. But not only that, it's a yoke, claudication to her pride and self-worth, by letting herself be submitted under the tyrannical control of Regina, the leader of the plastics. Superficially, it gives the appearance of being calm. There is a continuous state of concord and solidarity as in any group of friends, but just by descending a few layers below the surface, it reveals to exist a perpetual state of struggle and discord to be on top and prove who is the boss. One in which Regina, their supreme leader, reminds to subdued ones at every moment, so they must always keep it in mind. Therefore, in her quest to take over social supremacy, Caddy does all in her power to dethrone Regina and dominate the plastics. However, in the process, she loses herself, stopping being the good, honest, and sincere person who she was, and, ironically, she becomes what she hates the most, that is, a less hot clone of Regina. Caddy was going against her real herself to be appreciated and loved by her peers. In such a way, she stopped being honest, rejecting the things that once made her stand out, like being good at math. Except that things aren't as easy as Caddy had imagined at first. Regina uncovers the plot against her and works out a plan to get even and humiliate Caddy, to teach her a lesson and make her see what her true place in the social organization chart was. Regina made public a diary in which the plastics mocked, gossiped, and lied about their school companions to humiliate them, blaming Caddy of it. This causes a general state of chaos, causing that all the girl students to fight and engage in mutual accusations about what was said in the diary, forcing teachers and principals to intervene, with the result that Caddy is found responsible of it all and punished, falling back to the bottom of the social hierarchy, returning to her original state of being a social pariah and to loneliness. Caddy becomes aware that it is better to be authentic than to be a sellout to the plastics clique, whose friendship is false and superficial. She also demonstrates her intelligence in an academic math competition, no matter that this does not allow her to have access to Aaron's love. Except that in the end, by apologizing to her friends and proving that she is honest, she not only regains the friendship of her friends, Janice and Damien, but becomes worthy of Aaron's love, for whom she must no longer be false to be worthy of his appreciation. However, in the end, Caddy realizes that the triumph of goodness has not been definitive, because in the next generation the seeds of chaos remain in force with the arrival of a new generation of vacuous pretty girls, ready to occupy the ecological niches that the plastics have left vacant. But she thinks that probably another heroine will come to put them in their right place just as she did it. Actantial analysis. Since this is a comedy, we might suppose the story would have an evident tendency towards positiveness. However, this is not the case and is presented as one of the odd cases in which there is an absolute equilibrium in the struggle of opposites in every isotopy, leading to an average index of a perfect balance, namely, a cogent absolute zero. This gives the feeling that the story, despite not being hyper-realistic or being a drama, reaches a wholesome balance in which the positive aspects as the negative ones are in perfect equilibrium. This is the psychological state we aspire to achieve to overcome neurosis. Caddy is an ordinary person, but never before she had been forced to bring into action her social dexterities, and because of that, she is naive and disoriented in this society she compares with the wilderness or jungle, filled with wild animals. Her guides make her see that the social order is filled with rules she must follow word by word if she wants to survive in this merciless and complex world. The price to pay for being socially inept is inauthenticity, alienation, and lovelessness. Regina, the antagonist, dedicates to make suffer Caddy because she knows what she feels about Aaron, and she stole him just for the sake of it, for merely the pleasure of causing damage and forcing her victim to bow down before her offender, faking they are still best friends no matter what. However, Caddy shows to be a fast learner, employing her recently acquired social skills to consummate her vengeance, vanquishing the antagonist intelligently and cleverly in her enemy's own game, which the same mistress of social damage is left so angry that looks for a way to forcefully remark who is the boss there. Caddy proves to be quite mature or able to grow up fast because there is prevalence in the positive pair of the opposites, maturity versus immaturity. However, this social knowledge does not help her to surmount the state of lovelessness in which she lives and must endure and prove to be able to self-sacrifice before being worthy of being loved, repairing the original damage that Regina caused just for the sake of making something mean or evil. The isotopy in which Caddy ascertains that she has become a master of socialization dexterities is power versus disempowerment. In this, Caddy manages to take off almost all her powers to Regina, but Regina strikes back, making a desperate attempt to recover all her predominance over her clique and her school's society after finding out Katie's and Janice plot to destroy her. In the end, the result is the destruction of her ill-used powers, namely, the plastics clique, returning her school to the idyllic state of an absolute lack of someone powerful. Namely, of a social oppressor who abuses his or her excessive social power over their fellow beings. Another interesting pair is the one between authenticity versus inauthenticity that attests to the dilemma in which many real teenage girls live and suffer in their endeavor to be socially accepted and loved by their peers, forcing them to be disloyal with themselves and be false. Namely, merely being the archetype of persona that is the average, cool, hot, and popular girl who is constrained to hide her true self for fear of being rejected if she shows it openly. Caddy feigns to be bad at math to gain Aaron's sympathy, except that her strategy backfires. Caddy understands her mistake and makes efforts to remedy such a situation and, in the end, she proves her true worth as she gives the right answers to her teammates in a mathematics tournament, winning it. The main isotopy in dispute is the one between being authentic versus being inauthentic. Caddy embodies this contradiction as she is torn apart between her true self, expressed in her friendship with Janice and Damien, and her hypocritical relationship with the plastics clique. On one hand, she plots to destroy the second, and, on the other hand, she pretends the other one does not exist and that everything is fine. Caddy is split into two opposed persons. One is fake and the other true, taking her to be devalued as a woman and human being, finishing in a pathological state of neurosis and stagnating in the state of persona. This only implies the sacrifice of her real bliss of being oneself, in exchange for being supposedly loved and accepted by the ones who are nothing but one's oppressors and murderers of her true self. The conflict leads Caddy to choose a middle path, a Tao, in which the resolution of the conflict finds relief in conciliating both contradictory beings. This leads her to join both opposed worlds, where one subdues the other, finding relief. Nevertheless, such a denouement is utopic, naive, and idealistic, like the one of Metropolis by Fritz Lang. In the end, Caddy is both things, plastic and cynic contracultural or, maybe, even a social loser, managing that both worlds were able to be happy and not seeing himself or herself in the necessity of exterminating each other. The posited solution then is the torment of the powerful by the insignificant ones and weak ones, and then, they will find themselves in similar conditions, in equilibrium, and both will be able, finally, to live at peace and be happy as none dedicates their days to oppress the other. This is, as it is obvious, not realistic. It would be the beginning of whatever generic run-of-the-mill utopic society from Plato to Karl Marx, and, therefore, it is not expected to take place in the close future. Archetypical analysis.
The answer to the question if the main character managed to reach individuation might be yes, it kinda does. She was able to grow up and find herself. Caddy, from being a social zero intellectually, achieved to become the spring balls queen and the queen bee of the plastics clique, deserving to be loved by Aaron, reconciling with her friends, expressing her true self as she triumphs academically and overthrowing the plastic social dictatorship. The character is stressed to the fullest, her love is taken away, she is forced to be inauthentic, double-faced, and a bitch, forced to play Regina's mind games and contrivances, just to be able to have the chance to impose and make goodness win at the end.
It could be said that the triumph of goodness at the end is unrealistic, but this is only forgetting the fact that, previously, there was great damage, a defeat, in which evil seemed to be invincible, so then, at the ending, goodness imposed and corrected the apparent state of darkness. Caddy not only suffered injustices, but also became what she precisely has sworn to destroy, namely, the queen bee of the plastics, and though she had already vanquished Regina, wished to defeat her absolutely, being disloyal with whom helped her reach such a lofty status. Afterward, she understood her mistake, managing to redeem herself, and making goodness prevails as she remembered who she was. It was the return to be the simple and honest person she ceased being in her zeal to defeat those who caused her emotional damage and filled her life with sadness and lovelessness. Caddy wandered unaware of what she was doing until she realized she was obsessed with vanquishing Regina, her nemesis, her complete opposite. Most of all, her fixation lied precisely in the destruction of her, so only one pair would have prevailed, which would have been something not good at all. However, this goes against a realistic solution in which both opposites must be balanced and, thus, restoring the wholesomeness of an individual in crisis. Therefore, precisely for the ignorance of Caddy of this, she was about to become what she hated the most, a lesser hot clone of Regina, able to do and cause her same harm. Only when she realized about this, the conflict, the prevailing unbalance between opposites ceased, returning normalcy to their convoluted micro-universe. The protagonist, instead of feeling commiseration, decides to do something, overcoming her very antagonist. It is an empowering fantasy based on disempowering the strong ones and the evildoers, which we all would like to make come true in our lifetime.